Welcome into 5 Clips here from our luscious, great home here in Charlotte, North Carolina on what we call Getaway Day. Great to have you with us on Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio, Sirius XM Channel 92. We started with them half an hour ago on the radio side, top of the hour. That audience headed over to a new breed of golf with Michael Breed, who was with us yesterday because we conclude Teachers Week today on the program, having been joined by some of the great instructors throughout the world of golf. And this program is always brought to you by Century Insurance. They are right by you. When it comes to business insurance, if you have those needs, which every business does, explore what your needs are and if they're being met with Century. They are right by you, and they are invested in golf in great ways with the USGA and also the First Tee, and of course with us here. Golf Pride, I'm looking forward to putting my hands on my Align Max grips later this afternoon down in the low country of South Carolina. They have the best products. They have the best product line. They have the best materials. They are Golf Pride. And of course, Peter Millar, every single thing that I wear, including everything today, from this Bingham Performance blazer to the pocket square to the quarter zip, that striped shirt and tie, it's all Millar. So if you have needs, whatever they are in your lifestyle with whatever you wear, they've got you covered at Peter Millar and petermillar.com. As we follow the PIF Saudi, I've waited my whole life to do that. I will say, I've always, and this is nostalgic, because for all those years on Morning Drive, there were, and we did the shows 7 days a week. So when golf started on Thursday, we didn't go away. Now around here, we call this Getaway Day. But around there, it was you followed golf in those parts of the world. And you got a lot of LIV players in the field this week. And it's a little still disorienting to see those guys wearing shorts. So be it. But again, that tournament beginning today, and obviously you'll have it again early tomorrow into the weekend here on Golf Channel as well. On the PGA Tour side, it's the final event of the year at the RSM. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there tomorrow. Looking forward to getting back to a special place that has a different feeling, whereas everybody who's going there to recreate sees their heart rate go down. You go over to the bridge on the causeway there onto St. Simon's Island. If you're a player hovering around 100 and don't have exempt status in 2026, it goes up. Not really for them. I love how we spend all the time talking about the machinations of what might transpire, and my gosh, one day they play holes. And at the end of those 18 holes, they put a number in a box, and they'll do it the next day. But I will say that it's exhibited. There's a finality to this, not only in terms of the season, but in terms of players being relegated back to the Korn Ferry Tour, of which there will be plenty this week in this field that are gonna make most of their starts next year there. As I was discussing when we started at 8 a.m. on the radio side, there are a lot of guys around 100. If you are interested and you're going, my gosh, like he's in peril, he may not be. There are guys, including Carl Phillips, who's 100. Don't worry about him. He's going to be chugging yoo-hoo all holiday season because he's the bubble boy, but not really, because he won a golf tournament, so he's fine. But last week is an example. Look, there's likely that there's not going to be more than maybe 3, 4, 5 that will play their way in, which will then force some guys out into conditional status from 101 to 125. But look, Adam Schenk was in a tenuous place last week in Bermuda, and through howling winds there at Port Royal Golf Course, won a golf tournament and launched himself outside the top 130, well inside the top 100. Chandler Phillips, who I thought, if you just look at him, is coming in to try to get out a right-hander in the 7th inning of a Milwaukee Brewers game. He's got a great stash. Don't ever lose that stash. He also launched himself into a place to where he's inside the top 100, not likely to move out of it. And of course, the LPGA with the CME concluding this week as well, which gets me to a couple points before we transition to speaking to a couple of elite teachers coaches, instructors. We branded it as Teachers Week, but there are a lot of things to a lot of people. Chris Como is going to join us. Justin Parsons, who is homed there. He is at Sea Island. That is where his home base is, but originally from Northern Ireland. He will join me. He's got an amazing stable of young and older talent that he works with on a regular basis. But let me just say this, because the LPGA concludes, the PGA Tour concludes, and let's just think about what 2025 has meant with respect to change at the top of the management flowcharts of all these organizations and governing bodies. I was recently with Mike Wan doing an event and doing a walk around Charlotte Country Club, which is going to play host to some USGA championships in the not too distant future. And you know, when Mike took the job at the USGA, he really was the newbie. There was an entrenchment of people who were running these organizations that had all been in those posts for a fairly significant amount of time. Look, just Craig Kessler, who's a very young guy who is already, and great news from them, Craig is scheduled to join me on the program here the week after Thanksgiving, and I'm looking forward to talking to him about objectives. And one of the main objectives he had was more television, and let's be live, like always. That is now the truth, and that's a reality for them. Every hour of coverage will be live, nothing delayed for them. New partners, new technology, more ways to present it on the television side, so that's great news. But Craig Kessler, Mark Darbin at the RNA, and I know obviously Mike now and Fred Ridley at Augusta National, they are the firmly established old heads among the five families and the extended families. But Brian Rolap at the PGA Tour and Scott O'Neill at Live Golf, all of these people, and Derek Sprague at the PGA of America, that's all this year. All of that transition to, and we're at a time when, and I can promise you that conversation about the rollback, we're entering into 2026, and out there on the horizon, you're going, I promise you, Sandhills is just over that next sand dune. It's not, but it's closer. And I'm talking about getting some type of consensus or some type of space where all of these organizations agree on what that's going to look like for the elite player in 2028. Not to mention what Brian Rolap has in mind in terms of the PGA Tour and what, if any, effect it's going to have on the relationships with the USGA and the PGA of America as well. So it's an interesting time, and it's a time where we're seeing a lot of new. One last thing about these conversations that I've had with all of these instructors. I'm not a big lesson taker. I'd rather play golf holes myself. I'm not a ball beater. But beginning with Harry D. at Ridgewood Country Club, and I looked at him and I thought I was taking lessons from Bob Golby. I mean, I looked at the golf professional and thought, he's imparting pearls of wisdom upon me that are going to make me better. And that, at the end of the day, is what they're trying to do. All of them, whoever the student is, make them believe that they can be more of a player than they currently are. That's a hell of an endeavor. So we take a break here. Chris Como, curious guy, curious mind, and his path alone is interesting, but he works with elite players. His thoughts about where we are, where it's all going. Biomechanics are a central foundational piece of the way he looks at getting better at golf, and a little bit later on, Justin Parsons. But I promise, we will not neglect the dogs. Not today, not any getaway day. We will have dogs, a very special edition, I promise you, before we're done, and picks for the final event of the PGA Tour season. Quick break right here on PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92, Sirius XM, and of course here on Golf Channel. Chris Como joins me next. Back in here on 5 Clubs on this Wednesday, Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. And this segment brought to you by Century Insurance. Business insurance needs, it's what they do. Let them do it for you. I promise you they will be right by you. Joining me now, top 50 instructor, Golf Digest, top 100 Golf Magazine, director of instruction at Dallas National, works with some of the best players in the world. Love having conversations with him. They don't happen enough. Here's Chris Como. And let me just say, for anybody out there going, how can I decorate my place like him? It's not hard. Good morning.
Doing the minimalist approach for sure.
This is indicative of somebody who just moved into some place. So listen, it's good to see your face. Thank you for carving out the time. And I will start with this. I said about having conversations with you, and I've said about you, curious person, curious mind. It's not surprising that you gravitated towards the likes of David Ledbetter, Mac O'Grady, Hank Haney. These are people that have a lot of thoughts. I want to start with Mac because he's mythical. Is there something that he imparted upon you that lives inside you today that you impart upon others?
I think in my own learning journey, he just had a very detailed approach to looking at golf swings. I mean, he would take the swings of whoever, right? A Nicklaus or Sam Snead or Ben Hogan, and really start to look at what each part of the body was doing. So I think in a lot of ways, there's a lot of the catchphrase of like biomechanics and looking at, very specific aspects of body motion. He was one of the first people to really dive into that. So that overall approach sticks with me for sure.
Chris, I was saying, people who watch this channel, listen to this channel, radio and television, they were likely familiar with you before your partnership with Tiger. And I only use that as a benchmark of looking at the last decade because you examine performance in a very physical way, looking at the way the body operates, trying to maximize movement. How much has the athlete playing at the elite level evolved in the last decade?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right? You see almost every person out there has a trainer now, has a physical therapist that they work with, a physio. It's deeper in the sense that, the person who's ranked 150th in the world is treating themselves like an athlete. Like back in the day in Tiger's era, you had Tiger and you had a handful of people who treated their body and just their overall, path and performance in golf with that mindset. And now it's kind of like table stakes. Like if you're not, working out with someone, if you're not getting treated after a round of golf, you are clearly losing an edge to the field. And then you see it trickle down to the recreational golfer also. Like all the golfers that I coach that are not, say, on tour, they also have a trainer they work with. They're taking a very holistic approach to their golf game. And in a lot of ways, people are using their sort of this passion for golf as like a vehicle for their own wellness and development as a person.
You are not only fascinated by, you're driven by examining performance, and not just golf performance. You and I had a great phone conversation a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about everything, and it leads me back to where it kind of began with you. You had a buddy who was working on a thesis. You got connected with a professor. You allowed him to kind of enter into the golf space, but there was an examination of biomechanics as it applied to athletes kind of across the spectrum. What is it about performance, generally speaking, that you find, whether it's fascinating, enthralling, captivating? Why is performance of the physical being such an interesting thing to you?
Well, it's my job and it equates to dollars earned, So, I mean, at the end of the day, like, if the guys play better, perform better, everybody's happier. But in general, I would say, biomechanics specifically, again, I think it's one of those like baseline things. There's so much more to golf and the game than just, say, the biomechanics side of it. But, having a bit of an understanding of the human body and having a basic understanding of some physics, it's like, you're swinging a golf club 100 plus miles an hour, hitting it 300 plus yards, and you're using a human body to do it. It kind of made sense to learn a little bit about that from a first principles perspective, and then, do some research to try to sort of collect data on good players' golf swings. I think in general, golf to me was always this interesting puzzle. How do you have whatever, a 5 handicap with pretty good speed, they can hit a shot that looks like a tour player. They can hit a 300-yard drive right down the middle, but then, what is the overall dispersion? This puzzle of what allows someone to be really consistent. Also, how can you have a tour player win one week, hit it awesome, then the next week really struggle? I just always felt golf had these questions that weren't fully answered, that I think early on was, a curiosity to try and figure that puzzle out was a big part of the motivation. And then it evolves from there, and you feel like you get better at your skill set, and then it becomes, how do you help these guys perform at the highest level?
I remember years ago when you would hear that a player was pursuing more speed, and the general reflex reaction was, oh no, that's a dangerous endeavor. And I think about some guys more recent, whether it's Steven Yeager, Matt Fitzpatrick, and somebody you work with, Xander Schauffele, who have done it in a way you go, my gosh. And there are more, obviously. What do you know now that maybe you didn't know 10 years ago, where this pursuit is not as dangerous, or one where you go, you're going to lose some of the things you already have? What do you know now that you didn't know 10 years ago?
Yeah, or even Bryson, right? During COVID,
yes,
we did a lot of that stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I think it is dangerous for a tour player a bit. It can be, right? Because there is people who have lost their game at on the PGA Tour of chase distance. If you're ranked, for example, 75th in the world, yeah, you want to get better, and maybe you think getting more club head speed will help you get better, and it could if you keep the same level of accuracy. But if you lose that accuracy, you could very quickly lose your job. And that's where I think it is a bit of a tricky scenario to try and do with the tour player. But there are ways to do it that I think sort of minimize that risk a bit, and you can do it intelligently. For a recreational golfer, I mean, just being able to create more speed is by far the lowest hanging fruit to get better at the game. I mean, they have less risk. They're not risking their job. There's tremendous upside.
Yep.
So if someone is, not playing for a living, I think the risk factor goes down quite a bit in terms of the overall picture, and it just creates so much more upside. Plus it's fun. I mean, it's just fun to hit it farther. So pretty much every recreational golfer that I will work with or advise, I'm like, you gotta, do it. Just do it. It's very doable. There's tons of great training systems out there to do it now. Stack is one that I'm partnered with, but there's a lot of them. And yeah, I think it's a really easy, low hanging fruit way to get better at the game.
Yeah, let me follow on that with respect to the recreational golfer, of which thousands are watching and listening right now. Is where do you start? Where do you start with someone? Because look, they don't have the range of motion of an elite player. They're not devoting their lives to maximizing physical optimization. So what are the kind of the principal things that you try to identify to then allow them to get 4, 6, 8 more miles an hour with the driver?
Yeah, I mean, really rough buckets. I mean, I think one is really just trying to get yourself to swing faster. I mean, and that's kind of the biggest one, and things will fit into that somewhat organically. So using a system, again, like Stack or whatever it is, that's part of it. The other part of it is, can you get stronger? Can you get more flexible? If you can make a bigger swing and you're more flexible, that's obviously a huge part of it as well. I think, it's good to have a trainer in your corner to do this process, and then obviously a coach who can help you with some of the technique side of it. I think the speed training part of it, you're trying to almost train your neurological system move faster, and I think things fit into it organically, and you want to work your way into it. You're not trying to go 120% right out of the gates, but you work your way into it, and you're going to sort of organically, things will work out a bit. But then if you can couple that with a trainer and couple that with a coach who can help you with the technique side of it, that to me would be the best way to put it all together. But I don't think you have to wait for your body to be perfect, or you have to wait for your technique to be perfect to do things that will help a bit when it comes to creating speed.
When your relationship professionally starts with Xander, what did he ask you? What was he somebody who wanted not the answers, but wanted to know what the questions were that you were going to ask of him? How does that start?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously such a a great player and has been for a long time, it was a little bit of he, kind of had felt like certain parts of his game were not exactly where he wanted them to be or had been in the past seasons. And obviously just trying to find a way to get better, which is, when you're already that good, is super tricky. And kind of like how I mentioned before, in a way, the better you are, that effort to try to get better, there's, a tremendous amount of risk that can be a part of that. So we just started off with looking at his swings throughout his whole career, really, like even as a junior, just trying to get a sense of his journey, where his swing has been, when he maybe drove it really well, for example, what was he doing? When he struggled, what was he doing? And then through that, I just kind of, developed an overall game plan in my mind, a game plan that I think I was also willing to pivot from, if you get more information and it shows you that original sort of like game plan wasn't exactly what you needed to do. But, just kind of update along the way a bit. But we started down the process and, we got off to a really nice start at the end of 23 and then 24. And then, obviously had a great year in 24. So I think it was just one of those things where how do you get better is always a question these guys are asking. But how do you do it intelligently where you can, again, minimize that risk that is very real for a guy who's already very good.
You mentioned 24. Look, you know this, that they swing the golf club, they hit the shots. There are snapshots that will always stay with me for players for whatever reason. His tee shot on 13, his tee shot on 15, final round of the Open Championship. Not exactly docile conditions, firm, fast. 183, 185, 107 launch, 119, shaping. This is under the gun stuff. I don't know if you were right there or if you were watching, you're seeing these numbers. What does that do for someone who is on this journey with him together? What does that do for you?
Honestly, it's tremendous, almost like awe and admiration. I mean, he built his I mean, it really is. He built his game with his dad. He built his mindset with his dad, Stefan. And yeah, I jump in and kind of help a little bit with his golf swing, but he has this sort of overall approach of just getting so immersed in the process. I mean, such a grinder, right? In all conditions. I mean, he's just the type of guy who will fight for every shot until the whistle blows. And that's kind of one of the things, he says, and him and his dad will talk about just, just like what can you do every day to just chip away at things. And, to see it in execution in those conditions, it's truly remarkable. And I would even say last year when he was in had an injury, sure, and it's a little bit of a struggle to get out of it. I mean, he just every day showed up. What can I do today, given the circumstances? Body's not quite right, but still, what can I do today? And kept doing that. And last year was a frustrating year, but that attitude and that approach never changed. So like even that alone, I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for. And then he finishes the year off with a win, right? And just never wavered in his approach or his attitude throughout the year, regardless of the results he was getting.
Last thing, if you can share this in 30 seconds, you were telling me about something you did with Shaun White. And you're into giving people interesting, captivating things to watch and listen to. And I've asked this of others, can you see flow? Can you see an athlete that you can see an absence of tension? They're in an unconscious state. And specifically people you work with, can you see it?
I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, but it's how skewed are you by the outcome, right? Like, so it's like if a guy's just playing amazing, it's so easy to go like, oh, he's in flow. Yeah, I mean, I think you can, but it's like I'm also seeing the results, so I'm going to be biased by that. But people have talked about it for forever, right? Like, how do you get into that state where just your perception of reality seems to shift? And I think that's where athletes are always trying to get to. Now, I think there's a bit of stars aligning that allow that to happen. And part of that's technique, part of that's where you are in terms of your thinking about your technique. ideally, look, the ball knows what the club's doing to it, right? So if you're swinging in ways that are all sort of out of sorts, it's going to be really hard to get into that flow state, no matter what, even if you're trying to like be athletic and not think about the swing, et cetera. But now if things are in a good place, say technique wise, but you're thinking about technique, that can also not allow you to perform it at your best level. So it's trying to find that balance to keeping, the technique side of it and all that in the right place, but then also giving yourself the opportunity to jump out of that and get into that more kind of mystical state where you're in flow. And that's why you don't see it happen that often.
Yep.
But, I mean, it's definitely what everybody is seeking. And I think it's a bit of a multi-pronged thing, and there's a little bit of a star in alignment. And that's, we're all trying to figure out what are their stars, what is the alignment they need to be in, and then how do you set everything up to kind of hit those windows, more often than not, essentially.
Well, as you know, Bryson was in flow and he took Wingfoot West down a dark alley and beat it into submission in 2020. Thank you, my friend, for making the time. I look forward to the next conversation with you. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Gary. You too.
All right, there is Chris Como. Those are winning words brought to you by Century Insurance. They are right by you. I can promise you, going forward, you're going to get things from Chris in various forms and fashions that you're going to be totally into. And again, I think about not only Bryson, and I'm glad he brought him up, but also Xander. When you embark on something and you achieve it in that way, I can't imagine to witness that. And like he said, like, you don't know. And I think that we are all affected by outcomes. Naturally, we are. It would not change my memory of certain people doing certain things, even though maybe the ultimate outcome wasn't necessarily what we thought it was going to be. We take a quick break here. We come back. Justin Parsons is going to join us. The radio audience has left us, but Golf Channel hasn't. We're with you until the bottom of the hour of 9:30 Eastern here on this Wednesday. Back on 5 Clubs right after this. Back in on 5 Clubs, top of the hour right now, with you for another half hour here on Golf Channel. Great to have you with us on this Wednesday. And this segment brought to you by Peter Millar. It's the holiday season. If you have needs, or someone in your life does, when it comes to anything that they wear, anything, they have you covered at Peter Millar and petermillar.com, including every single thing you see me wearing right now down in that Bingham Performance blazer. All right, joining me now from Sea Island as we continue Teachers Week. It's been great to hear the thoughts from so many of the best teachers in the world, trying to make everybody better at every single level. He's a master instructor, works with so many different players who play elite professional golf. He is Justin Parsons. Good morning from Sea Island, as we've been joined throughout the week by guys from Sea Island. A home game for you. How you feeling?
Gary, it's great. You're looking pretty good, might I say. Yeah, it was fun this morning. We made a little adjustment in the timings. I was able to go watch Davis Love hit a couple of shots before he headed to the 10th tee at Seaside, which is about 75 yards from where I'm sitting. And Harris English went, I think, to the first tee of Plantation. So, yeah, it's all happening here. We've got a lot of activity, a lot of different events, and it's great to be with you. The weather looks like it's going to cooperate this year. So, yeah, we're pretty excited for another RSM Classic.
You know, everybody's journey in golf everybody's got a story. For somebody growing up in Northern Ireland in Colinchie, and you're not far from Newcastle, where one of the, arguably maybe the best golf course in the world, Royal County Down, I believe it's over your shoulder there, among many great photos you can have of Royal County Down. But oyster farming and the things that were kind of your upbringing, but you love sports and you participated in all sports, and then you narrowed your focus. But I'm curious, is there somebody early in your life who you thought knew the golf swing? It could have been an old guy who was crafty. Was there somebody who you remember getting your first thoughts about how to hit a golf ball well?
Well, we were very lucky in Ireland, in Northern Ireland. We just got such a great kind of amateur scene down there. We got great boys championships, youth championships. We had a great golf club. I was very fortunate to be a member of Knock Golf Club in Belfast, which was pretty close to the school that I was at, that I probably didn't go to enough because I was at the golf club most of the time. But Gordon Fairweather was the head professional there. His grandfather, Sid Fairweather, had won the Irish Club Professional Championship multiple times and the Ulster Professional Championship. And Gordon was a very, very good player and remains a very close friend of mine. I was lucky I did my traineeship under him. And, he was really able to share a lot of the fundamentals of the golf swing with us. As I was able to progress through some of the ranks playing for the Ulster team, I remember Don Patterson, who helped Ronan Rafferty get to #1 in Europe. And, Ronan was one of the first guys to play the larger golf ball in the Ryder Cup, I think, back in the day. But I'm going back a couple of years to see Ronan every year now at the Renaissance Club, where he is an association. But Don was a great coach as well. He used to really emphasize rotation and width and the stretching of the golf swing and things like that. So those are certainly two guys, Gary, that I remember imparting a lot of wisdom to somebody who sometimes listened and sometimes didn't.
The pivot in your career, getting to a Butch Harmon golf school in Dubai, and being around him to some degree, do you think Butch has a specific most valuable trait, because he is the godfather?
There's no doubt that he's the godfather. I went to the Floridian for a member guest. One winter, flew over from Dubai and spent some time there and did some various things. And he was good enough to give me a lift from West Palm Beach across to Orlando. And I think he'd been having a good time most of the weekend with a lot of his friends. And all I did was ask him questions for about 4 hours on our car journey across the state. I'm sure he wished I would shut up at some point, but I remember saying to him, "Butch, if you could have given every player one thing, what would it be?" And he said, "JP, if I had a bottle of confidence, I'd be a billionaire." And I always thought to myself, that kind of summarized, his ability to give players a little bit of confidence, impart some wisdom about the golf swing, get into the shot making, get into some little things that they need to do, and make them feel like they're better players, regardless, whether their technique improved or whether their, but they felt that they were a little better when they spent time with Butch. And I believe that probably is the master stroke. And that comes from, his ability to deal with people. That's something I try and pride myself on or mirror myself on with the Harmon family. They're really good at dealing with different people and getting onto different people's wavelengths and figuring people out and figuring out how different players tick. And, that's certainly something, Gary, that I really enjoy about what I do.
Justin, where you are, it's interesting, the duality of people who go there to recreate. And I heard you say this, and I believe this. You go over that bridge in the causeway, and if somebody took your heart rate before and then after, it'd be like 9 beats less per minute. But for you and all these great players you work with, they want to keep their edge. Does the environment there lend itself to you specifically having the focus of the number of players you work with because of the proximity of somebody else who makes a living doing the same thing, being very close by?
Yeah, I think there's a broadness to that question. I think the performance center that we're fortunate enough to work at here with the facilities that we have, and for us to be able to pivot and go into the studio and look at some force plate data or grab a TrackMan and use it on the range or take the guys out onto the golf course and see them play 2 or 3 holes. And then for the players, a volume of players here. We've got bounce games where, Patton Kazire and Harris are taking on a couple of Corn Ferry players on a Monday morning. And then, if somebody doesn't hit it great, they text me and say, "Hey, could you watch me for 30 minutes? And I do think that's, I was very fortunate coming here where we had a group of players and TA Todd Anderson had gone, he'd headed down to Sawgrass. So there was a little bit of an opportunity there for guys to have somebody who was, who was interested and informed kind of on their doorstep. And, I've been very fortunate to work for Harris English and Brian Harmon, who've had some real success for the last sort of 5 or 6 years. And, I'm sure they would have been successful anyway, but to be a little bit a part of that, like I heard you in the segment before with Chris, to be a bit a part of that is very, very satisfying and very thrilling when you, when you see what it means to not only those guys, but the wider community here. It's something that gives you a lot of pride. The
collage of photos we just showed was representative not only of the people you work with, but also of this game being there for you if you're good enough to make it something that most of your life can be part of the journey. Blades Brown is a teenager. Davis Love III is not. And in between that, Harris English and Louis Oosthuizen and Ben Coles and Brian Harmon, teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Is there something they all possess that you could easily say there's a language or there's an understanding that in the absence of that, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing?
I think they all possess a quiet aptitude for learning. You know, when they let somebody like me into that inner synapse or wherever we go with that, they possess that ability to listen and you know, Brian Harmon and I have worked hard. You know, Brian's taken a little bit of time since the Tour Championship, and you know, I always say to Brian, one of the things I love working with him on, you know, we'll work on his golf swing. I'll give him a lot of different feels, a lot of different ideas, pretty much surrounding the same sort of inner theme. And then he'll suddenly say, hey, JP, I'm going to do this. And he's extracted from all of those different little ideas his own version of it, and then he's going to imprint that version on, you know, on his golf swing. And you know, that's just a little example. You know, there's an inner fortitude to most of those people. There's definitely an ability to digest and understand, you know, information that you've got to pry at, and you've got to make sure that they're being able to kind of impart that to what they're going to do with a golf club. But you know, I do agree at every stage, albeit that the learning stages are a little bit different. You know, when you have a teenager, you really have a pretty much a fresh canvas to start to spread some paint on. When you've got a successful mid-20s or 30-year-old player, they've already had their success. They've got their kind of blueprint, and you've got to make sure that you're not scaring them off too much. And with older players, sometimes, you know, like Davis and I talked over this week, you know, we're almost trying to get him to swing a little bit more like he swung in his 20s in regards to like the rotation and the way he uses his lower body and the separation and things like that. Those things that can be lost as we sadly get a bit older.
I heard a story you were sharing on a great conversation you had, a Golfer's Journal. It was about a dinner you had with Rory. And in the larger point, you were talking about Butch and all the great major champions he had worked with. And he made a point about, you know, the player swings the club. But the point you were making is that the players have the feels. Only they know what those are. How do you interpret and only they know, again, at Impact, what they feel. And those feels are the essential ingredients to do what they do. How do you interpret those feels? And do they come and go?
Yeah, I'll give you the full Rory rundown real quick. I was sitting and I was telling him that Butch had won 14 majors and this, that, and the other. And Rory looked at me straight in the eyes. He said, I'll not repeat exactly what he said, but he said, how many shots did Butch Harmon hit? And that made me, you know, think about things a little bit. You know, I think we can get a little too big for our boots in our game sometimes, and we got to recognize that these guys are the talent and they're the ones doing these great feats under pressure. But to your point, I think that's one of the like online coaching things. I think whenever I'm there with a player, you know, you asked Chris a question about being in the flow state and whether he can see that.
Yes.
And I do think that when we're with people, when we're immersed in what people are doing, and we're communicating on a deeper level, whether through language, body language, communication, generally speaking, I think we start to really we can get quite kind of deep into that. We can sort of sense what people are doing. We can see the strike. We can see where the tensions are in the golf swing, and we can begin to kind of like, let's say, unravel what they might be doing. And I don't think we can ever be completely aware of what they're feeling, but we can certainly then, from a golf ball standpoint, begin to go, well, look, you've done this to the golf ball with the golf club, and then let's unravel that back because maybe you didn't get the outcome that you wanted. And again, through communication, through language, through body language, through their responses, then you can begin to get to the nucleus of the problem.
Last thing, I didn't mention Aldrich Potgieter earlier. You work with him as well. He possesses the most harnessed speed on the PGA Tour. What's the most important aspect of making that an asset, the speed itself?
I think for a player like Aldrich, it's just recognizing that when you start to put some professional systems in place, you're going to start to narrow the parameters between your very average days or not so good days and your good days. So, you know, little things with Aldrich, like making sure that he practices correctly, making sure that his alignments are pretty good, making sure that he can recognize the difference between practicing on a driving range to put those things in place and then go through your pre-shot routines, make sure you're training your eyes to pick up the target correctly each time. Train the gaps. You know, Gary, he hits it so far that he might hit an 8-iron 185 yards and might hit a 9-iron 167 yards. So all of a sudden he's got 22 yards between his 8 and his 9. So making sure that he recognizes that he needs to be able to professionally plug those gaps. You know, and like Butch has always told me, you know, when you get somebody really good, don't screw him up. You know, that's what that's part of our job, is take a great young talent like that and add to it a little bit, and don't try and reinvent the wheel, because you know, that's a raw talent that you've got to shape, and you don't want to dismantle it.
A home game is always a good game. Enjoy it. I hope I get to see you while I'm down there. Thank you for adjusting and making the time. Thanks so much.
Pleasure, Gary. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Justin Parsons. Again, you start just naming the names of the people that he works with. It's so interesting because, again, it's all ages, it's all styles. I heard a great story he shared about Louis Oosthuizen, about how much of a tactician he is in his preparation before he gets into competition. Those are the kinds of things you can learn about the best teachers and people who allow you to learn about how you can be the best you can be at it. Thank you to all of them. We take a break. Our picks, dogs, we're not done. It is a Wednesday here on 5 Club's Golf Channel. We're back right after this. Back in here on 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. This segment is brought to you by Golf Pride. When it comes to making grip changes, and most of you are already playing Golf Pride, take a look at their product line and look at all the options that you have available to you through your bag, through that reverse taper putter grip series. It is Golf Pride, the standard in grips around the world. It is time for Dogs of the Week. If you have a dog that you have a relationship with that extends to the golf course, watching golf, if you've got a dog at your club, whether it's in the shop, it is the superintendent's dog, send it in. We want to recognize all the dogs in the world of golf. And we will do dogs on Monday. What, are we not going to do dogs on Thanksgiving week, our lone show? This is going to be a special edition of Dogs of the Week, and you will understand momentarily. But send them in to dogs@fiveclubsgolf.com. Here are the Dogs of the Week. And this dog, Rye, is the dog of Dutch, the founder and inventor of Blind Strike Golf. Rye was the first golf dog at TPC Scottsdale, featured during the WMO for years, now at Grass Clippings, home of the Grass League. And here is Rye, pictured with her litter of puppies. So, Triv, who now patrols the fairways with Rye at Grass Clippings. And then there is Uno. Uno is Dutch's dog and is with him when he coaches his PGA Tour Champions players. And then finally, we have Tiff, who is also a PGA Tour dog with her mom and dad working for the PGA Tour. That is fantastic. And now we transition to a very special dog and its dog's owner. That is Dave Sibley, and the dog is Webster. Dave recently lost his battle with pancreatic cancer, and Dave was the head golf professional at Gannett Municipal Golf Course in Lynn, Massachusetts, just north of Boston. He succumbed to pancreatic cancer after a brave fight. He was 54 years of age. Criminal. Webster is the mascot there at Gannett Municipal, and I can't even imagine what Webster is going through, because Webster and Dave were inseparable. And Dave was the steward of Gannett Municipal. He was born and raised in Maine, and appropriately in Augusta, Maine. Dave was honored in 2025 as the PGA section member of the year in his section up there in New England. And for all the people there at Gannett Municipal, there's been a very hard time because Dave, for 12 years, was their head golf professional. He is somebody who went to school at Methodist with a very dear friend of mine, Andrew Shuck, and began his path in the world of golf and touched a lot of different places, from the Pinehurst Resort to all these different facilities, before going back to where, like he said, he was a New Englander through and through. So for all the folks again, and I know that with heavy hearts you see these photos, but Webster will continue to be omnipresent, I know, there, but with certainly a hole in the heart with Dave's passing. And with that, we transition frivolously to our picks this week, final event of the PGA Tour season. So we're going to show you who we like this week. For me, Michael Torbjornsen. For Gil, it is Bud Colley. Emma and Brendan go with Brian Harmon. Taylor, Vince Whaley. Jay plays chalk. He's apt to do that with Harris English. And Johnson Wagner with Eric Cole. Those are our picks brought to you by Golf Pride. Final picks of the year at the RSM. And let me just say finally to all the teachers who joined us, and I said at the beginning of the show, if anybody's wondering why wasn't Butch on, Butch was the first call. Butch is indisposed this week, and if you're going, how could he be indisposed? He's somewhere where he just can't join us. So let your imagination go wild with that. But for all the teachers who joined me, I say thank you. But to all the instructors, coaches, and teachers out there that try to give everybody a chance to get a little bit better at this game, thank you for that pursuit. We're back on Monday. Xander Schauffele will join us. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you Monday.